grown-up giggers. It is so nice to see faces and names, both ones that I know and ones that are new. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here at Grown Up Gigs, an inside look at dream jobs held by real people. And Crosby Noricks, who's with me today, is one of those grown-up
The real
people who have one
people.
of those. You're a real person. You have a dream job, and you definitely are one of those people that popped into my head when I was like, "Ooh, who's doing something that people don't think they could really actually do and make a living at? That's like super cool, and they're successful and smart and killing it." And it's you.
Gee, gee whiz.
So thanks for being here.
I'm gonna record that and put that in my pocket for future.
Yay, knew it. So for those of you unfamiliar with Spreecast, I love this platform because it offers us a few different really cool things to do. So the first is the chat, which some of you have already found. So you'll see I was able to put Crosby's links up there, PR Couture and CrosbyNoricks.com. PRCouture.com and CrosbyNoricks.com is where you could find her. You can find me at whenIgrowupcoach.com. You could talk to each other. You could talk to us. Crosby and I could see what you post there. Don't be shy about putting your own links to your blogs, your sites, or whatever. I'm like so happy and thrilled to have you guys meet each other, as well as tapping into what we're talking about here. And the other really cool thing about Spreecast is the Ask a Question button, which I love. So when you have a question, just click on the Ask a Question button. You don't have to wait for me to say like, and now it's time for questions. Uh, just don't, just I'm gonna see it. I have my eye on it. So when a question comes up, it shows up on my screen. I know that it's there. And then when there's just a natural break in the convo, every 15, 20 minutes or so, I will plan to break for questions. So uh, in the last few weeks, yeah, this is the second week of Grown Up Gigs. You guys have been quiet with the questions, so I just want to encourage you to ask away. And again, just whenever they pop into your head, feel free to put it on. So, Crosby, you are a fashion marketer, a consultant. You are like you're a one-woman band, but there's this company behind you. Super exciting. We're going to be talking all about that in the next hour. But I have to start every grown up gig with the question, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Hmm. The first memory I have of like very specifically wanting to be something uh, was I was very into dance as a young girl,
Mm.
and I really wanted to be Janet Jackson's choreographer. I think it was like in between. It was like in between Rhythm Nation and then the That's the Way Love Goes, and there were like all of those
Yes,
music videos. And I watched
yes.
something on MTV or something about her choreographer, and I was in all these like silly local dance classes, and I was like, that I want to be Janet Jackson's choreographer. That is my mission. That is
I
my
I love it. I love it. She was badass back then. That sounds like it
yeah.
was,
It was like
1990-ish.
right when that like If music video came out. It was a very big deal. And yeah, and I loved dance, and I thought I loved Janet Jackson, and I just thought like what a cool job to like make up dance moves for Janet Jackson and to get to be in her music videos. Um, I think
Right,
yeah,
that's part of it. Right.
well yeah, there had to be a
And
little
I
bit
liked
of
how
like behind the scenes, like not just always behind the scenes.
I like
Yeah,
how specific you are. Like not only a choreographer specifically Janet Jackson's
yeah, Janet
choreographer
Jackson's coordinator, and specifically in her music videos also.
in her music videos. I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
think that yeah, that was
I love it.
probably like the first like that's what I want to be when I grow up thought that I had.
I love it. So how take us through.
So
Take us through.
unfortunately,
Like
my dance career never really took off.
when did that end? When did that end?
Oh
So
my
like
God.
talk to us a little bit about that journey, like from
Sure.
Janet Jackson's choreographer to even like, the end of high school.
Yeah, I mean, um, I got sidetracked in my dance career by uh, some really shiny velvet dresses worn by some Irish dancers. And I
Oh.
left the world of jazz and modern, and I became an Irish dancer pretty much so I could get the outfit, the costume, I guess. That was really like the entry point. That's
Such a
like
peek
throughout,
into who you are now.
yeah,
Right.
that's been a really good sort of bargaining chip. When I was in, I think like fourth grade, my mom really wanted me to go to cotillion, and I had nothing to do with it. I was like, I don't want to go to cotillion. We just moved to like a new neighborhood. It was going to be at a different school, like even more different than the new school that I was like navigating. But she really wanted me to go to cotillion and like learn these, traditional like they learn how to walk.
Yeah. Oh wait, Crosby, can you hear me? I think we're can you hear me? I think we might be having some technical difficulties. That's so weird. You just kind of cut out of nowhere. Mm. Hello? Can't hear you. All of a sudden, that doesn't make any sense. Sorry, you guys, bear with us 1 minute. Yeah, if someone could type in the chat, hopefully I'm not the only one that can't hear her all of a sudden. Okay. Yeah, you're down. I'm wondering if it's I should even just click off of you and then click back and then bring you back on. It was like out of nowhere. You did nothing wrong. Okay, let's uh, oh, that's not good. Okay, give me 1 second. Do I still sound distorted? Someone okay. Oh, that's good. Thank you, Sarah. All right, let's wait for Krusty to get back. Um, of course, this is the one day that my producer Arwen is not here, and she would probably be able to save the day. Um, anyone have any questions for me while we're waiting? Uh, Tomorrow is my fourth entrepreneur anniversary, which is really exciting and like weird. And so tomorrow I will be here on Spreecast at 8 o'clock, as per usual. But happy to answer all of your questions and all the celebration, and I'll have some special guests. So that's going to be super, super, super fun. And I hope that you can join us then. But if you have questions now, thanks, Sarah. It is exciting. Um, as we wait for Crosby to come back on, and of course, Crosby and I were chatting it up for like 15 minutes before we came on live just to test things out, and everything was fine. So I don't know if something happened with her internet connection or um, what is going on. Yay! Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, it's very surreal. It just feels like my fourth entrepreneur anniversary just feels like a long time. Okay, let's see. Crosby just came back. Let's see. How's that been good? Hey, thanks you guys. Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, Violet. Okay, talk for us, lovely.
Am I coming through?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I have no idea. It
Yay!
like
Thank you
won't load
guys.
on
Thank
Safari.
you
It
for
like
bearing with us.
yeah, sorry. It like would not load on Safari, so now I'm on Chrome. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Whatever. As long
Oh,
as you can
okay.
hear me.
Okay, I could hear you. Yeah, I mean, you obviously did nothing, but it was very weird. It just decided to not behave.
Okay, you're
So
cutting out a
you
little bit, but
so you were talking to us about cotillion, and your mom wanted you to go to cotillion, but you were like, no.
right. So yes, so cotillion, and basically I was bribed with free dresses. So my mom said you'll get one dress a week if you like just promise me that you'll go like learn the foxtrot and whatever. And so we would like go to like, Ross or something because it wasn't like we were, going to Bullock's or I don't even know, like wherever you went in the 80s. So we would go to Ross and I would get a dress and that's how she got me to do that. So yeah, I have most of my life been persuaded by outfits or by clothing.
This
I
is a
think
good insight.
yes. Yeah, I am definitely like one of those people where if I see like a really beautiful garment, like it's sort of like art. Like I get weirdly emotional. Like I was just at Bergdorf's for the first time and like all that couture nonsense with a friend of mine, and like I couldn't really talk. I just was like I don't know. I was like, you know, I felt so many feelings.
Right,
Um,
right,
yeah.
right.
So um yeah, I think that much more than fashion, I think that like clothing has really been I've just always really been interested in clothing and the way that people dress and the way that we're told to dress and the way that different people dress in different cultures and the way that we tell people who we are based on what we're wearing. And that really kind of was my first sort of love of clothing was really that and this really amazing dress up box that I had as a kid. So like slumber parties at my house were like always like dress up makeover parties. So my friends would come over and like I dress them and like put their makeup on and then we'd take pictures. It's a really good thing that the internet was
Oh my
not
gosh.
that there was
All of
no
the
YouTube or Instagram when I was like 8 years old. My God.
all of the throwback
Um,
Thursdays. All the throwback Thursdays.
yeah,
You'll just be putting
yeah.
up pictures
It's
of your
yeah,
friends from way back,
goodness.
which is
But
so
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I loved dance. We talked about like I was very big into like drama and acting in like middle school, um, in high school, in all of that, I was also writing a lot. I used to write like lots of like poems the way I thought that poems were supposed to sound when I was like 12, like trying to write like poems like the way adults do. They're just like ridiculous and terrible.
I love
And like writing little short stories. I was like the editor in chief of the eighth grade magazine that we
it.
had at my like middle school. And so, kind of writing always in the peripheral part of my brain. And then, kind of originally was like, well, I want to do writing. I love fashion. Like, that it made a lot of sense to go into like wanting to work for a magazine. I had been like subscribing to every, YM teen sassy thing since I was like 9 years old. So that was kind of like the first real interest. But I think, I mean, even up until I went to college, I didn't really like I thought fashion was cool and I looked at maybe going to like, FITM or FIT or something. But I also had a lot of other like academic interests that weren't just fashion, and I didn't necessarily want to just go 100% into fashion at that time. I also wanted sort of a college experience, and I wanted to see if there was other stuff that maybe I liked more or something. And so I actually started as an international studies major. I'd done a bunch of traveling and spending summers in foreign countries and things when I was a teenager, and kind of thought international communications studies, that kind of thing, was the way to go. Um, and that was kind of like my vague plan when I
Interesting.
left home for college.
Interesting. So you took the fashion, and I think it's really interesting just semantically that you differentiate between fashion and clothing. I think like me being a lay person, I wouldn't see the difference. And now as you talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess there is a difference between fashion and clothing. But even
Yeah,
though
I
this
mean, I
was
think there's the industry,
yeah.
there's the industry and the
Right.
business kind of side of fashion. And then there is a much more sort of intimate relationship that we all have with the clothes that are in our closet, or even, memories we have that are connected to, like, I remember exactly what I was wearing, like when I got my first kiss, and I could, like, it was bad. And I like could not wear that like blouse like ever again. It was just like filled with like this like emotional like, intensity. Um, but then I also have things like I have a little box of of clothes that I just keep with me that like remind me of really important moments in my life. And I have, a couple of pieces from my mom that are super important to me and special to me that are like from her life. And I think there's something really beautiful about this like physical representation of um, time and memory and nostalgia and all that stuff. And clothing can certainly do that.
So interesting. I mean, you just seem so attached to the stories, like clothing telling stories. Uh, just so interesting. It's another artistic form and obviously
Yeah,
self-expression,
yeah,
but in a really
exactly,
creative, artistic
exactly.
way. Yeah, I love it. So you kind
And
of
I think it's
you
always funny, like when people, I think it's always funny when like, especially men in particular, are like I don't care what I wear, I just want to be comfortable. And it's like you're still making a statement about, well, like I always am like, well, like cashmere is like really comfortable also, A. So you don't necessarily have to wear like that like
right,
boot stained t-shirt from
right.
like 12 years ago or whatever. But I think, generally speaking, even when you're not intentionally trying to make a statement, you're making a statement. Like there's all these really interesting like visual cues about, class and identity and subculture and all these things that are going on
Mm.
just based on like how you get dressed in the morning. And so I think being sort of intentional or conscious about that, like I've always looked at clothing as an opportunity to express a particular like thought or feeling or like way that I'm like where I'm being like kind of pulled or interested in any given day. And yeah,
Mm.
sometimes that's like, I don't know, like ripped jeans and a tank top. And then other times that's, especially in San Diego, inadvertently dressing up more than everyone else in the entire establishment by wearing heels and not flip flops to an evening event. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, all of that stuff I think uh, like really makes sense to me. And I think it's always like of the artistic disciplines, I definitely see how you dress as one of them.
Right. And and it makes sense too with the major that you chose to pick when you went to school, thinking of international relations,
Yeah, all the
communication.
different ways that, yeah, all the way different ways that that stuff happens. So I ended up actually majoring um, in media studies, which was basically film, and then gender feminist studies. And I was really interested in the relationship between the fashion industry and the feminist movement, and then also the ways that different ways of feminism have intentionally used clothing as a political like a form of political
Huh.
communication.
Wow.
Academic. So good. So that's kind of where I came at it. Um, in the beginning was really about, trying to reconcile, I think in college you're trying to reconcile these different parts of your identity and you're exploring different things and you're learning new modalities and ways of being. And there's independence and there's, people you've never met before. And I was just really like soaking all that in and trying to make sense of like who I was in the context of all of that. And and for me that was about, yeah, how like examining what it means to be a woman who loves fashion, knowing how controversial and sort of heated that relationship is both on a personal as well as kind of a collective level. um, And there wasn't like a communications or a PR marketing or any of that stuff at the school that I went to. So media studies was the closest form of kind of communication, and it was, you know, it was film, it was art, it was all kinds of different things, but primarily film. Um, and my senior thesis project was called Fashion Playground, and I had this kind of like art installation. I
Okay.
also wrote like a thesis, but I had this weird like art installation that was all about like creating like feminist fashion. But like basically it was just like here's a bunch of like I don't know, like paints and weird like charms and
Mm.
shirts and stuff. Like go to town and make something that sort of like communicates who you are or something like that. Um, So that was fun. It was like a fun little party. I didn't really know that I was making an art installation until later when I was like, oh, that was kind of like performance-y art installation-y. Um, at the time, it was just I wanted to do something that was like that brought people together, that was kind of event driven, that like got people actually like touching and feeling and experiencing the ideas as opposed to just like writing a thing that nobody would read except my advisors.
Right, right. So at this point, were you kind of looking away from the fashion magazine route? Not really
I mean,
looking to do that anymore?
I think that at that point, like the idea, and this is probably, you know, like growing up in California, the idea of like going to New York and like getting a job as like a magazine, fashion magazine intern or whatever, just like completely terrified me. Like I didn't really, I come from like a family of teachers. I had no idea like how to do that. Um, I especially like early on, you know, there were a lot of people that were really important to me in California. I didn't necessarily want to leave. I was never so like fundamentally like career ambitious that
Mhm.
that like made sense
Uh-huh.
to like kind of try to do that. But I think underneath that, I was just kind of like scared. And I thought that, you know, you needed to be a certain like type of woman or have a certain type of background or look a certain way in order to be able to get in there. And I didn't feel like I was that girl. And so I think I just like figured out a way around it.
Mm.
And all the film and stuff, like I actually, when I graduated from college, I was actually most interested in doing like wardrobe or like set design for film. And so I originally graduated and moved to LA with the intention of trying to do that without really any understanding of like what that really meant. But like, you know,
Isn't it crazy
what do you really know at like 22?
Right. Well, college does that,
Um,
right? I mean, they make us think we know about certain things, and you're like, yes, I'm gonna go work on the movies and like wardrobe
this
and
is a
set design and
career. Yeah,
right.
I know how
And
this works.
yet you
Yeah,
don't
no, no
know, you
idea.
don't really know anything about it. You just know like, oh, that's something that's related to the things that I like doing. So I think I'll like it. So let's like go start my life.
Exactly.
Like,
So I'll just start my life and do that thing. And then you're like, try to do it. And you're like, this isn't working. This is hard. People
uh-huh.
are mean. I don't understand.
So
Um,
that didn't
yeah.
work
So
too well for you.
yeah, that never really took off. Yeah, so my best friend and I, we moved to LA. I mean, I went to school outside of LA. Um,
Uh-huh.
we moved to this little like 1920s two-bedroom house in a somewhat safe neighborhood where she
Mm.
still lives today. Um, and we tried to get jobs
Yeah.
and we had student loans that we had to pay and we tried to figure it out, you know, and it was just and it was hard. And so I got a job at the Buffalo Exchange in Hollywood, which is like a resale shop. And you basically, you know, I spent my days like going through people's like get rid of bags.
Mhm.
But also like a lot of stylists would come in and designers and you know people would sell like parts of their collection and stuff. So it was actually like a really good way to learn a lot about labels. But yeah, it was like a very, you know, she worked at a bookstore. I worked retail. We had like popcorn and white wine for dinner sometimes because we had no money. We like are in LA, but we can't really enjoy it because like we have no money. And
Right,
we're both like, I remember at the time, like I remember like our apartment was like $1,000 a month. And I remember thinking to myself, like, my God, how am I ever going to come up with $500 every single month for rent? Like, this is
oh,
ridiculous.
Oh, our 22-year-old
Um,
old selves. Don't you want to like hug
yeah,
them and
like it
pat
was
them on the
just like,
head?
oh, and I have to keep paying it month after month. Like, God, this is intense. Um, yeah, so kind of struggled there for a couple years. Yeah, and of course, now we look back on those years, somewhat fondly, and we've forgotten like how miserable they were, and it just kind of
Right,
feels like we were like camping or
right,
something. Um,
right.
but yeah, but at the time, yeah, it was, yeah, it was kind of a struggle.
Mhm.
So yeah, eventually I decided to, after thinking about all kinds of like weird random careers, like should I be a nurse, should I go teach ESL in a foreign country, like should I, both my parents are in like private education, should I go and do like development work for like a fancy private high school, like just anything and like that I could think of. I moved to Spain. I lived in Barcelona for about 6 months and got my like TEFL to be able to teach English somewhere else. Thought that was just like a good fail safe. Like when in doubt, you should always be able to leave the country and do something. Um, so that was kind of my thought there. Eventually, like I was gonna teach, like I don't even know, like so many different things that I like,
Mm,
was just really kind of floundering. And eventually was like, well, this isn't really working. I should probably go back to school. Going back to school is like a really good answer when people are like, "What are you doing with your life?" And you're like, "I'm in graduate school." They're like, "That's brilliant," as opposed to being like, "I am miserable,
right,
actually."
right.
But I have no idea. So yeah, so eventually, like that's how I ended up in San Diego. Was actually coming here for grad school. Um, I had for a long time. I'd actually applied to two different master's programs for women's studies and gotten in and just like couldn't really like force myself to go. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
all of a sudden I kind of was like, oh hey, there's this whole other aspect of my background that isn't more like the gender studies stuff, that's like this whole like communication thing. And I was like, that's a job. That's a thing you can go to school for. So and apparently like San Diego State has like one of the top communication program things. So and I thought, of all the places to go, San Diego's like not that bad of a place
I would say so.
to go for school. Always intending that I was going to go back to the Bay Area like as soon as I was done. And so I moved down here, and
Very well.
like within like a week I had a job. It just like everything kind of happened really, really fast. And in that respect, San Diego has always been like really good to me in terms of like there's always been, people or opportunities, whether those people or opportunities ended up being like as magical as they appeared at the time. Like I've always been sort of like led
Mm,
to opportunities, and there's always been stuff that's shown up in a way that like certainly didn't happen when I was in LA or um, in other places that I've tried to move to since.
that's interesting, and thank you.
So I just keep hanging out here. Yeah.
All right, but I talk with my clients a lot about like having to push the door open, like push it and force it and bang on it, and versus just kind of tapping it open or having it open for you. And so
Yeah.
I think it's important to just be aware of like when things are really not working and you're banging on every door for a while,
Yeah.
that might be the time to look
Exactly.
around and say something needs to change. Something's not flowing
Yeah.
right. It's not good that.
Yeah,
That's
for
great.
sure.
I'd love to break for this question that we have, and I'm feeling this is probably going to be a hard question, but I like it. She wants to know, what did you learn from what you did not know? How did that lack of knowledge inform the next phases of your career evolution? It's actually a good question, but I feel like it's such a hard,
Right? I'm like trying to wrap my brain around it. What did you learn
right,
from what you did not know?
lack of knowledge. So, I mean, even hearing you talk about
Ooh.
just the time that you were floundering, and it was like between the Buffalo Exchange and graduate school, and you were going through all the different things that you could do, but like obviously didn't land on at that point.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you felt you didn't know and
I
needed
think
to know that you sought out?
Mm, I think that the thing that I most didn't know, that is the thing that it has been most prudent to know, is that I didn't know that I had the option to just create it myself until I decided to just create it myself. I think, I mean, in terms of that kind of like head banging against the door thing, I had a lot of, self-imposed limitations. This is the type of person I am. This is the type of person that gets these types of jobs, especially in kind of like a glamorous, like very like aesthetically driven industry. I had a lot of like self-imposed limitations. And just general, like I think insecurity that comes when you're young and you're just getting started and you're like, I have no idea what I'm good at. I have
Right.
no idea like if I should even be in this room. And there's all these, and you're learning like you're learning about what makes you uncomfortable, what you enjoy doing, like where you're getting praise, where you're getting like kind of stuck. And I think in the beginning I had this, this idea that like, oh, okay, so like I go and I apply for a job and somebody says, yes, we love you, and then like they take you under their wing and they like help you to be really good at your job.
Well, that's what they
And
do in the
like
movies.
people kept telling me, yeah, and like a nice montage with like a cool like lady song in the back, like some Liz Fair in the background. But
Definitely.
like that kept like not happening. I kept being sort of promised this one experience, ending up in a complete like uh just like like poor work environment, like like just unacceptable, like just ridiculousness. And then thinking like, oh, well, that's because like I'm not good at working, or like there's something to do with like me.
Right.
Um, and as soon as I kind of was like, okay, and this is kind of like one of those ahas of like general adulthood, I think, which is like, oh, it's actually nobody's job to do that. It would be really nice if they did that, but that doesn't really seem to be what's happening. So how can I how can I make myself available to more of the opportunities that I do want and the people that I'm interested in,
Ah,
using what I have? And so the beginning of PR Couture was really like, I think that fashion PR sounds like a really interesting career. I've kind of been doing it for like 2 years, and that's been working out really well. But I also know there's all these other ways that you can do it. You can do it for like high fashion. You can do it for fast fashion. You can do it in-house. You can do it at agency. You can do it in New York. You can like, what does it look like if you're doing fashion PR in Missouri? Like, does that even exist? So I had
right.
this like curiosity about it, and I felt a certain amount of kinship to other people in this profession because you know, theoretically, these were also people who, really loved storytelling, really loved writing, loved fashion, had to be kind of business smart and strategic. So these had to be like my people. I was like trying, the beginning of PR Couture was a ton of interviews of just trying to like find my people. Um, and so I think, you know, I continually have to remind myself, like, oh, like you're waiting for somebody to explain it to you. Like nobody's going to come and explain it to you, or like give you the gig, or like, oh, you have to either ask for it or put yourself in the right space for it, or like don't even worry about the way that it's like theoretically supposed to be done and create your own version of it. um, and the most gratifying thing about having built this platform is like uh, it's much like now that like whether or not how do I say it, like now when I was trying to find out about fashion PR for like my graduate thesis and jobs and stuff like that, there was like nothing on the internet. Like there was like an article from like 2005 between like three people. It was like a roundtable article. I read it 90 million times. PR agencies didn't have websites. Nobody was on Twitter. Nobody was like, oh, hey, come behind the scenes and like see what it looks like at a press preview. Like I had no, like it was just this like complete wall.
Right. Right.
And so and I tried to, and here I am, like this graduate student being like, I would like to try to legitimize fashion PR in like major PR trade journals. Will you let me interview you about all these like weird esoteric PR strategies and like theories that I'm learning about in my graduate program? And they were like, most of them were just like not even going to email me back.
Right.
But I found like a handful of women who like did actually like were nice enough to sit down with me for an hour and like tell me about their jobs. Um, so what I love about PR Couture is like nobody else has to have that experience. Like
Hmm.
there's now a place where anybody who's interested in like fashion PR or the space or whatever can go and get all kinds of interviews and access to people and contact information and tips and strategies and real life experiences of like people who are actually in the space. Um, and I think for me, like it probably could have been all kinds of things. It just happened to be fashion PR because that's where my brain was when I like created this thing.
Right.
But I think underneath that, it's about access to information and education and support and not making anybody feel like they don't have access to information that they want or people that they want to meet. And it coincided with this shift in our industry of like that becoming more of the appropriate way to be um, through like social has made us have to be so much more like transparent and accessible and whatever um,
Right.
and also kind of reminded everybody how fun it is to actually connect in that way um, and I have heard of so many like young girls that have gotten virtual internships based on a Twitter conversation or like based on a comment that they left on my blog like there's all kinds of conversations that are happening now that weren't happening.
Hmm.
Um, but serving that like young girl who's trying to figure it all out, and also like serving that publicist who's like trying to figure out what direction she wants to take her career and having a place where like she gets celebrated for like a cool campaign or for the work that she's doing. Like um, that's all like the underneathy part. That's like
Right.
not this is not really about fashion PR, but it's about like finding places to like celebrate and inspire and like educate people.
It sounds like you
The
just
end.
the end. It sounds like you just created what you needed as
Yeah.
a young woman. I mean, it doesn't matter that you're a woman, but like as a young woman that was interested in fashion and kind of talked herself out of entering the industry because it was so unknown and
In like a
so
traditional
scary
way.
and so intimidating that all those years later, that's really what you created was for that person that feels that
Yeah,
same
and I think that like
intimidation.
it makes perfect sense, right? Like so many of the things that we grew up to like create are based in the things that we didn't have.
Hmm.
So like that you know the pain and the struggle, and then you're like, how can I? And then some people take the initiative to say, okay, how can we fix that? How can I create a platform or a community so that somebody doesn't have to feel as you know um, as excluded or as
Right.
confused or like how can I
Right.
make that not happen um and then a lot of the like great work that people do I think is based on the lack of having had that experience
Right.
um and yeah and now like I've it's been now in December I think it's going to be 8 years since I started this thing
Right.
and and I just recently celebrated like a year of doing it 100% on my own. And I think, now at a certain level, like I've already answered my own question. Like the question that I had was not the question, like I'm no longer, 26 and fresh out of grad school being like, what are jobs? Like how do jobs work? None of that's really happening. And so I've had to shift to be like, well, now for me, it's about like, how do I serve that community and how do I take the incredible access I have to people that are day in day out working in this space, how do I like connect to those people and how do I continue to like provide the right kind of information and access to like serve the future semi-me's or whatever. um
Is
and that's
that
that's an interesting transition when you realize
yeah? It's is that when you decided to put up CrosbyNoricks.com and kind of separate things a bit for yourself?
the website that I set up one random evening and haven't really touched since.
Oh, really?
um
It doesn't look like it. It
yeah,
doesn't. That surprises me because it
I'm
doesn't look
so
like
glad. I was like,
it
oh,
doesn't look
right,
like
I
it.
have that. Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth all the time between, um, am I going to be PR couture forever and ever? What if I want to do something else? Where do my, social handles and social presence like fit into that? I think that's like this big, and I talk to clients about this all the time. It's like, well, should the Twitter be like for the brand or can it be me? Or should the Instagram be just about, our line and our collection? Or can I post like pictures of my kids? Like, or I'm posting a lot of pictures of my kids and I don't really want to post pictures of the collection, but I feel obligated to have an Instagram. Like, that's kind of like one of the new uh, personal branding like struggles of our age, especially as, kind of an entrepreneur or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think probably that was the intention was like I want people to be able to go to a space that's like more about me and my background, and then I want to have this sort of like content rich destination. Um, every time that I try to do that though, it always works better when I do it through PR Couture, it seems. So like our Twitter account, like the I have a personal Twitter account. Even when I was like updating it, the PR Couture one did so much better in terms of like growth and engagement. And everybody like they talk to me by name, like they know that it's me.
Right, right.
Which is a little bit challenging because then you're like, but what if I just wanted like somebody else to do it for like a while? Well, I like took a break, but like and even it's funny because now Martha, who's my managing editor, like she'll even post stuff and like use her initials and people still like assume that it's me, or people will write other articles and I'm like, I didn't write that article, but they like still assume that it's me because there were so many years where it was just me,
Right,
and now like
right.
bringing in more voices and stuff like um and that's a responsibility that is that I have to like think about in terms of perfect world versus like what is actually working versus like what
Right.
is the perception that people have about. I mean, people have this perception that PR Couture is like this, like super swanky, like that I've got like an office with like, 900 girls in black, just like, and I'm like, I, I love that. It's me and, like most of the time it's me in my kitchen. Like,
Right.
um, and when people find out that like, PR, that like this site, that we're not a PR agency, that's been another kind of area of contention. Like now that I'm not also working full time, because I worked full time for the first 7 years or 6 or 7 years on top of like growing the site. So now I'm like, well, now I'm accepting like a couple of clients. Does that make us like what is that actually? We're changing from a blog to a company. Like company, is it an agency? Is it consulting? Is it education? Is it like what is it? I'm trying to figure out um, that. I think a lot of people like they start their business and then their blog is like the place where they talk about industry related things and they're like a little more flexible. And I started as a blog and I like backed into a business. So that's constantly like a thing that kind of like, confuses my brain.
Interesting. Okay, hold that thought because I definitely want us to go
Yeah.
in a little bit about like the different ways that you make money and that transition from being full time to doing from having an office job to doing this. I think that's important. But I want to take Jasmine's question. So thank you for asking question, Jasmine. Jasmine says, I plan to move from Detroit to New York this year. Yay! I'm only 19, but the fashion scene in Michigan is non existent. What are the go to rules to gain PR experience in a completely new state?
Well, I mean, in terms of fashion PR, it's really about interning as many places as you possibly can. Um, I wish that it wasn't true and that people could just go and get like entry level jobs with salaries right off the gate.
Right.
Um, there are a ton of volunteer opportunities. Um, not to be super shilly, but there's like a whole bunch of them in the book that I wrote. It's basically exactly for people that want to break into fashion PR. It's called Ready to Launch. So if you're interested in that, that gives you like from like start to finish how I would recommend that you go about kind of breaking into the industry. But beyond that, it really is about internships right now and getting as many of them as possible. I would recommend, figuring out what kind of PR you think you want to do. And there's an agency directory on Pierre Couture, gives you a bunch of agencies. There's also, some other lists that you can Google of some of the bigger agencies, and reaching out and asking if they have an intern program, trying to get informational interviews. There's also always volunteer opportunities during Fashion Week. So if you can time your move to either February or September, there's that can be a good way of getting like a really short-term volunteer gig that at least gets you kind of meeting people. And a lot of those get posted on Craigslist and also on fashionista.com and sometimes on Pierre Couture as well. So there's some stuff.
I'm putting the link in here, which is that is exciting. Okay, so let's yay, Jasmine says thanks, great advice.
No
Uh
prob.
yay. Okay, so let's go back a little bit, and I still want to encourage you guys to ask some questions. We have another 15 minutes left, so we probably have time for another one or two more. But going back a little bit to making that transition, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that you were working on pure couture for 6 or 7 years before I was like, okay, I'm going to do this full time. So, how did you know you were ready to make that transition?
Well, I mean, for a couple of years, again, just Pierre Couture started as like this blog, and it was just this thing that I did.
Uh-huh.
And I never really started it with the intention of it like becoming a business or anything like that. A couple of years in, I realized that I was spending a lot of time on it and that I needed to start treating it like almost like it was a client of mine, the way that I was doing, with my PR clients. And so I, kind of sat down and got clear about like who our audiences are and how to kind of serve them and kind of a light monetization strategy. We've had a job board for a long time and we do some banner advertising. The Find an Agency directory has been around for a couple years. And for the most part, though, it was really about just like speaking on a ton of panels and kind of doing more like thought leadership. And a lot of that I was able to do through the agency that I was at most recently. They were really great about seeing a lot of value in what I did through PR Couture and then what I was doing as the director of social media. So we would regularly kind of collaborate on, a speaking opportunity would come in through PR Couture and I would say, hey, I've got this thing. Like, I would kind of mutually promote both the agency and the work, and then they would let me take the day off of work. And that was really great. And I'm like, so I had there was a lot of like being at the right agency with the right people
Right.
made it so that like I didn't really ask myself the question, should I do this full time for a long time? Because I was really creatively challenged. I loved the people that I was working with. Figuring out how to create a department was something that was really like intellectually stimulating, and social media was such a new area that it was like I was learning things through PR Couture and I was learning things through our clients, and it was really like feeding both sides really well. Um, I, I realized that I needed to just kind of make the jump. Um, Not so much like well, partially because I kind of thought to myself, if you don't see if you can do it and you just go right to another job, like you'll never have answered that question for yourself. And what if I can actually, and what if I am actually supposed to be just like really focusing and growing this thing? Um, and I got to a point where, at my job where I had I was ready to have more like full on creative control. Like I wanted to kind of like be more of a business owner. I'd worked with so many clients and helped like so many clients with their strategies and blah blah blah, blah and all that stuff. And I just like I wanted to be able to do that, like devote that kind of like brain space to my own project. Um, and even when I left, I wasn't like 100% sure, like, okay, I'm just going to start working on Pierre Couture, like that's the plan. I really, I was a little burned out from, 7 or 8 years of basically working two full-time jobs, and I
Right,
just
right.
kind of needed a little bit of like brain space, and like I wanted to be able to just like be creative, and like I needed some downtime to do that. And so I just, I remember I was like taking a walk with a friend of mine, and I kept waiting, like, okay, like something will come to me again, kind of as I was talking about before, something will come to me out of the sky and say, here is your next step. It's real pretty and it makes a lot of money and it's over here. And I'd be like, oh, thank you. I've been waiting for you. And it just kept like not happening. Um, but I was really scared about like making that transition financially. And, you know, and I'd gotten accustomed as like, a director level, whatever. I was proud of the work that I was doing, and I was proud of the money that I was making. And I was a little bit nervous about going back to that, like, you know,
Popcorn and white
popcorn,
wine dinner.
white wine world, even though like, I knew intellectually that like I was a different type of person, and that I had many more people that I could reach out to for work. But there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to go back to like, being scared about like being able to pay rent, and like, getting all like into scarcity and freaked out and stuff. Um, and I was like walking along the harbor with a friend of mine, and she was like, well, she's like, what if there's like never really the right time,
Mm.
and like it just never happens, and what actually needs to happen is you need to say, yes, I don't even care what the next thing is, but I know that there needs to be a next thing, so I'm going to do it. And I was like, she's a wise one, that particular friend. And I was like, yeah, like, yeah, that's a really good point. It's harder, but I also kind of like felt that thing that happens when you're like, this is not the way that I want it to go, but this is like the more challenging, more like this is where I have to be braver than I thought I needed to be brave. And so
Right,
it's probably the right decision.
right.
And so, a bunch of things kind of like coalesced. With the work that I was doing and the clients that we had and the direction that the agency was going in and kind of all of that stuff. And I just kind of was like, I think it's time to go. Like, I think it's just time to go. Um, and so was able to like make that happen really fast. We ended on like super great terms. I've done, consulting work for them since. That feels really good to know that like we left on really great terms. And then I I don't know, I had all these plans like I'm gonna go to Argentina for 6 months, and like I don't know, and I just like started working, and I just like didn't stop working. I haven't really I just like haven't stopped working. Um I mean, I've certainly like done a lot more traveling, and I've like been able to stay with friends for weeks at a time, and I've been, playing around with different, ways to make money, um, and first thing I did was like the biggest site redesign that I'd ever done, like the most money on like a new site. Um,
Gorgeous.
and thank you. And and that was really like being like, okay, this is not just a blog anymore. Like this is a business. The blog is a component. We have all this other stuff. Um, and yeah, and I just like, yeah, I never like made it to Argentina. Made it to Seattle for 3 weeks, but I did not make
You
it to
could still get
Argentina.
there. You could still get
Um,
there.
but yeah, I think that I just, I was a little nervous about like making money and stuff. And so I just felt like I needed to kind of just do that and stabilize that. Um, and then yeah, a couple of months went by, and I was like looking at my stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's some like pretty consistent monthly income. Like I feel like I can start to count on that amount of income coming in every month. And I also found it really empowering, terrifying, but also empowering to realize that like the amount of money that I make is strictly dependent upon like the things that I create and introduce into the world, into like for my audience, you
Uh-huh.
know? So, um, and I think year one, I like keep saying, year one, I was just like so excited that like anybody wanted to give me money. I was like, this is great. And it was like so fun because it just all felt unexpected.
Mhm.
Um, and, uh, And I think year two is much more about, trying to be a little bit smarter, like what worked, what didn't work, what did I enjoy doing, what didn't I enjoy doing. But I'm also like really trying not to lose sight of the fact that like when I didn't expect anything, I got a lot back. And so
That's
I don't
so
want to get back into this thing where I'm like pushing, 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 pushing. Um, if if I don't have to. Um, and so this year's been a little bit slower. I've been a little bit slower. I'm much less freaked out because I had a great first year. So I'm just like a little, just been a little like,
But there's trust
and
there, it seems like. It seems like
yeah,
you have
I
the trust.
know that I could, yeah. And I think, self trust as as another kind of like marker of adulthood, I think is really something that I've come to really learn and think about a lot. Both that sort of like, it's your job to create as much as possible the things that you want and to put those things into motion. And it is also almost your responsibility to yourself to like have enough self trust to say like, even if this goes horribly, horribly, horribly wrong, like we'll figure a way out of it. Like there are friends, we can sleep on their couches. Like nobody's going to let us get destitute. Like there's a supportive, community of
Mm-hmm.
people who, like there are all these people you could reach out to. Like let people know that you're looking for a little bit of work. Like there's all kinds of things that you can do. Um, and that really, I think, um, when I talk to friends of mine that are still in that space of kind of being like, do I stay in this job? Do I get another job? Do I like whatever? Um, and they look at me and they're like, you did it. And it's so, um, and it really comes down to me being like, yeah, I just have to continually believe in my own ability to take care of myself as a grown up.
Uh,
Um,
yes. Okay, wait, I'm going to stop you there because I want to get to this question from Chrissy, which I feel plays into this so well. And she wants to know the advice that you would give with regards to creating your own opportunity. Do you have any sort of proven steps? So I feel like you just kind of touched on this, and maybe it's more of like a hippy dippy touchy feely answer than like, yeah, step one is this, step two is this. But is there anything else to add to that about how to create your own
yeah, I mean, I think
opportunity?
I mean, there's a ton of like tactical. I mean, first you do like all the weird hippy dippy stuff to kind of like find your passion and like find the thing that you think that you can do. Or you just find the thing that you know how to do that doesn't like feel really hard and you do that. Um, and I think everybody has something that's, there are some things that we do that are easy and some things we do that are hard. Um, and so um, obviously like having some sort of online presence
Mm-hmm.
is like the first thing. I mean, I think the thing that is like so funny is that the world is so willing to like make you an expert, whether or not you've actually like earned that title. So for better or worse, you have a huge opportunity to show up with your beautiful web presence and say, this is the thing that I know, or this is the thing that I'm interested in learning how to figure out if I know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you start by saying like, this is the space that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I did, tactically that I wish that I had spent a lot more time on. In the beginning was like um, really working on like growing my email list, really working on finding people in sort of like like industry areas and kind of collaborating together to create space. I've sort of, come at the sort of like solopreneur, like digital superstar space like really late because I was over in this like fashion space and there was nobody else. And it took me a while to be like, oh, that's my subject area. That's not necessarily like my strategies and my tactics. Like that stuff is pretty similar no matter what it is that you have to offer. Um, so I think, things like that, getting the most people sort of opted into your little slice of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then figuring out like how you can serve them with as much free content and valuable content as possible. Um, Pierre Couture now has like 7 years worth of like, daily, sometimes daily blog posts. Like that's a ton of content. And part of that is because I just started with a blog, not with a business. And so I was just like, I just want to hear all of it, like, and I believe in, not making people pay for stuff that they can Google. Um, as much as possible, unless like they don't want to Google, in which case, sure, you can pay me. Um, but I think,
Right.
but I think, it really comes down to like establishing a strong personal brand and not overcomplicating it for people and saying, this is the thing that I'm showing up to say that I have knowledge, experience, or passion for. And this is why you should be a part of my little like slice of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all the ways that I'm going to serve you. And then sooner rather than later, like don't wait 6 years to like decide that you're going to do some consulting like I did. Then you figure out like, well, what is the thing that people might pay me for? Maybe it's an ebook, maybe it's a consulting session. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I need to have X amount of sort of success stories before they offer something for sale. And I think that the reverse is often true. Like, if you don't offer something for people to buy, then they won't buy anything. But if you offer it, they're much more likely to buy it. And most people, if they like you, they want to buy something.
Mm-hmm.
So what is something that you can put together, whether it's, a quick little course or, or an ebook or, or something more intensive, like, working with you over 3 or 6 or 12 weeks or whatever it is. But what would that look like? And then, getting up and having that offer there, regardless of, kind of what happens, and then figuring out how to integrate that offer into the free sort of content that you're offering. That
Oh,
would be like the bird's eye, like,
fabulous.
I don't know. This is what
Fabulous
it looks
bird's
like.
eye view.
I hope that's helpful.
It's fabulous. And even though we are 1 minute over, I can't leave a question hanging. So quickly-ish. Um, Malia wants to know if it took a big mental shift to treat yourself and PR couture. I always have trouble with that word. Like your own client. So you mentioned earlier that you were treating it like a client. Was there a mental shift there in order for you to do that?
Yeah, I think that that is one of those things that I constantly have to remind myself to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, if you're working, I mean, PR agencies, businesses all the time. It's like when things are slow, it's like really easy to be like, we're going to work on our marketing, we're going to work on our whatever. But when you're like busy and you're doing the work, like it can be hard to take a step back and really make sure that you're like nurturing the branding and the marketing and the PR and stuff of your own company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I am not a particularly like I don't hmm, like I like to have a good to-do list, but I'm not somebody that really thrives under like a ton of structure. So I've done things like, okay, every Tuesday is going to be like work on the business day, and like that never really lasts. And I haven't really figured out like a way to like program that in, other than like, oh, it's 11 o'clock on a Thursday, and suddenly I feel like working on autoresponders. Like I guess I'll go to bed late. Like I
Right.
just kind of
Right.
um, wait for inspiration to hit. But I think certainly if I were advising somebody who were, better at that kind of stuff than me, um, I would certainly, work out kind of roadmaps. I would want to have like touch base calls with my team. I would, um, every 3, 6, 9 months want to evaluate some goals that I set for myself. And I think, yeah, one of my challenges is like all of that's happening in here, because it's still kind of new to me to put the structure of the business like out of my brain and into some sort of written form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but yeah, but I think yeah, it's something that I'm constantly like, oh right, you know. But I think it's really important because the results that you get from your own publicity and your own online presence are the very things that bring new clients to you. So it is an integral part of growing your business and of lead generation, as they say.
As they
Um,
say in the
so
business.
yeah,
Well, and I also think
yeah. I
it
mean,
made such an impression on me when you spoke earlier about um, kind of doing PR couture in collaboration, so to say, with your agency. So I would think that that made you more accountable to it because your company, your agency knew
yeah, and
about
I'm
it,
somebody.
on
Yeah, and I'm working for an agency where we work with clients all the time, so I'm doing client work all the time.
it. Right.
Um, I don't know if I was in a different business where the if I wasn't in marketing and I was figuring out how to like treat my client like a marketing client, it might be more challenging. But my approach to everything is very much baked in. First, we come up with a strategy, and then we figure out who are the right people to execute, and then we implement, and then we evaluate the results. Like that's how I that's how I do work stuff. Um, but remembering probably to do that and keeping that top of mind and really just like valuing this thing that I built. Part of the thing about like not reaching out to people soon enough is like I was like, I'm just doing this teeny tiny thing over here. And like I didn't even think that like a big fancy schmancy person over here would care.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then like they're like, how did I not know about like how do I not find out about you? And I'm like, that's my bad. Like that was
Right.
my missed
Right.
opportunity of like playing small and thinking that I was just doing this teeny tiny thing and not knowing like that the need that I had is a need that the CEO of like a huge freaking fashion company might have also had or whatever.
Right.
Um, so I'm constantly having to be like from the PR's client, it's like or the agency's client, it's like where am I missing opportunities by thinking too much in my own box?
Right. Let's end it there. Let's end it there.
All right.
It's perfection. Thank you for giving us an extra few minutes. Thanks you guys for giving us
Of
an extra
course.
few minutes and for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. Go find out more about Crosby and our company and fashion PR and marketing and just I think like so much of what you talked about is just very transferable to anyone that's looking to be entrepreneurial, have a creative business, kind of, work for that, have that self employment mindset even when they are employed someplace else. Um, so it's just super golden. So go visit again Crosby at prcouture.com. Probably don't go to crosbynoricks.com.
I mean, you can if you want to. I'm probably going to go there after this and just
Okay.
see like what's going on over there.
It looks great. It looks great. I did not know it was
I'm
like
so
a
glad.
throw together
Excellent.
blog. And I want to give a little promo to my career camp that just opened yesterday. We have early bird special until tomorrow evening. If you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, let me help you, and it'll be fun. It's camp and creative. Otherwise, we will be back. I will be back here alone tomorrow, kind of turning the table on myself, celebrating my fourth entrepreneur anniversary. So just keep your eyes on your inboxes for the link and come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock and get ready to ask me your questions and celebrate and have champagne and play ukuleles and do that other fun stuff. And then Carrie Chapin and
Woo.
Jessica Hepburn have recorded interviews coming later this week. So lots of goodness and still a whole another week of grown up gigs left next. So thank you guys for being here and thank you Crosby again so much.
Thank
You're
you,
a
Michelle.
peach.
It was fun.
I so appreciate it. Bye, everyone. Have a great night.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.